Hello and welcome to Nikon Report, your weekly roundup of all the latest Nikon news and all other photographic announcements that we found interesting. It's Konstantin here.
And this is Becky.
All right, it's number 92.
Wow.
Not much news this week. Well, I think we are kind of now slowing down the train towards the next year. So we probably will see little things coming through, but overall, you can just take a break. I think we all should take a break.
We should.
Yeah. See you in 2023 then.
Bye. First up, we have Nikon's Q2 Financials Q&A, which has been published. We're not going to read you the whole Q&A. Sometimes we do. Today, we're just going to give you an excerpt, probably the most interesting piece of information from the article that was published on Nikon.com.
Yeah, it's from Imaging Products Business. And the question was, any change in the situation regarding the past procurement constraints? So basically, shortage.
Yes, the answer was, in the imaging products business, we have secured enough components to fulfill production of 700,000 units as originally planned. Sometimes procurement constraints emerge for some parts unexpectedly. However, the overall situation continues to trend toward improvement.
When they said the parts are secured, that means they already have them in stock, or do you think they have the contracts in place so they get enough to supply 700,000 cameras?
I think the latter.
Yeah.
I think that's what they mean. I don't think that they actually secure in one go 700,000 parts, particularly with that caveat. Sometimes procurement constraints emerge for some parts. So with that, my assumption is that they've set up the contracts, they put in their orders, they've said, look, send us a pro forma for this and we'll pay you, whatever.
Well, back in Christmas 2021,
Yeah.
I could secure 10 Z9s
Yeah.
on pre-order.
But you couldn't secure them, really.
Well, that's the thing. That's why my question stands.
I don't have an answer to your question, so I don't know what you're asking me.
You see how difficult this podcast will be?
Yes. Okay. Well, there we go.
If you'd like to read the full Q&A, it's on Nikon website, or we put the link in the description below, so do that. All right. And then moving on to Inter BEE exhibition in Japan. It's a video and audio exhibition in Japan. And apparently Nikon had a huge stand in there, and the website, which is called Kappa Cameras, published some photographs from that. So let's have a look at their stand.
Look, they've got one of those focus puller thingies.
That's right. Well, since it's a full broadcaster, so what they were trying to do, I guess, is to pitch their cameras for broadcasting needs.
Right.
Now, one of the interesting things that they showed are parts of cine lenses being mounted on a camera like Z9, which is being fully decked out with all the metal rigs and all the cables and all that. But they also showed the MC N10 grip, and New Shooter, which is a YouTube channel as well as a website, published a full video of what these grips do and how they attach to the camera. Do check this video out.
There you go. Now, on some potential non-news, but possibly news, we don't know. We're going to share it with you anyway. Sigma Netherlands claims that a number of mirrorless lenses for the Nikon Z mount will probably be released in 2023. Note my use of inverted air quotes, which you can't if you're listening on the podcast, but we'll expand on that momentarily.
Well, apparently some representative of Sigma Netherlands came back to the customer with an email which translates to this.
Good afternoon. Sigma will probably release a number of Z-mount lenses next year. It is not yet clear to us which lenses exactly. Sincerely, Sigma Benelux BV.
All right, so let's discuss this. So a couple of weeks ago, we reported the rumor that apparently Nikon just licensed 2 lens manufacturing companies to produce lenses for Z-mount. So we guessed that one of them is Sigma, and we asked you to guess what was the second manufacturer, and a lot of people thought that it could be a Zeiss lens. Now, we also had an interview from Sigma CEO back in January 2021, so almost 2 years ago, and he said that they're looking into possibility to produce that lenses. What do you think, Becky? Does it seem to you that it is happening now?
It feels like it's imminent. When we originally met the Sigma CEO at the Amateur Photographer Awards, I think that was in April this year, he was still saying that it was a work in progress and that they were trying their very hardest. They were in talks about trying to make Z-mount lenses in Sigma's lineup a reality. So I think if it is going to be 2023, they've actually moved quite fast.
That's true.
Going from being in talks to it imminent release.
Yeah.
But I welcome it, regardless of the time frame. I very much welcome it.
It's about 2 years to discuss things. That's true.
They just have to keep convincing them.
Things are moving fast. But I would say I absolutely agree with you. I think I would be quite surprised if that is not going to happen in 2023. It seems like that is set to be. Now, let's talk about the potential lenses they can release. So there are few things we heard in the past. One of those things is that the lenses that manufacturers release should not compete with the Nikon lineup. And we see that with Voigtlander lens, first of all, because those are manual focus lenses and not autofocus, first of all. So they're very different products. And then we have Tamron 7300 release, which is not on Nikon Z lineup. Therefore, it fulfills that gap. So what do you think? Is Sigma going to do the same thing, or are they just going to straight compete with the likes of 24-70, 2.8, et cetera, et cetera?
I don't think so initially. I think that if Nikon have given them or are in the process of giving them permission, there will be a strict set of criteria that they can fulfill. For example, not having a like-for-like lens and aperture. This is all my own assumption, by the way, that maybe they'll potentially offer them DX lenses as a kind of starting point. I would love it if they would offer them some of the sort of unusual Sigma Art lenses. 14mm 1.8 would be nice. A 135 would be fantastic. You know, things that Nikon don't have already that there's definitely a gap in the market for. I don't know. What do you think? What would be your dream sort of Sigma lens to come out?
My dream would be all of those manufacturers releasing a lot of lenses. And
All
just,
at the same time.
Exactly. And then we have a choice of all those lenses, plus the F-mount glass that is compatible. A lot of people do forget about that.
Yes, they do.
And then another thing is, I think the art lenses are going to happen. And the reason for that being is, if we are sticking to 1.2 glass native Nikon, then we're going to have 1.4s in the art form. So my only concern is 135 1.8, which is on the Nikon's roadmap. Therefore, I don't think we'll see that, but we'll see the likes of 51.4, 35.1.4, maybe 85.1.4, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what I'm also hoping to happen is a lot of DX lenses being released, and Sigma has a lot of them. And one of the particular one that I really, really like is 1835 1.8. Which is 1.8 zoom. It's fantastic for video work as well as for low light work. But they also released, I think, 18 to 52.8 for Fuji X mount, which is a DX mount effectively.
Yes.
So there's a lot of lenses that Sigma can release pretty much straight away. All they need to do is just effectively add the Nikon Z mount and maybe do slight adjustments for the sensor, et cetera, et cetera. But I think if this happens, we will start to see Sigma lenses coming through quite frequently. The reason why I think it's going to be more frequent compared to Tamron is because Tamron has a licensing agreement on the Nikon named Tamron lenses as well as their own ones.
28, 28, 75.
Exactly, exactly. So I think if Sigma doesn't have that agreement, then they'll probably release maybe 2-3 lenses at a time. At least that's my hope. Tell us what you think about it. Are you happy for Sigma lens to come through? Obviously, the Sigma reputation has changed in the last 10 years. They actually had an anniversary a couple of months ago where they suddenly changed their design ethos, where the attention to details as well as premium quality was more important than the price. However, even the price of current art lenses is lower than native offerings from Nikon or Sony, et cetera, et cetera.
Very true.
So tell us what you think and in the comments below, and hopefully we will see them soon.
Lovely. Next up, ShotKit have reported that Nikon is the most popular camera brand used by professional photographers. They did a survey of 1,000 photographers about what camera they used in 2022. And we're going to go over some key findings for you. Although please note that this is a survey of 1,000 users, of which 280 are pros and 720 are amateurs. And so there will be a fairly wide margin of error. So do take the results with a pinch of salt.
That's true. The website is based in Australia, so probably the sample of people are Australians. Now, let's have a look at the key takeaways from it. And hopefully the trend that they show will be similar to the worldwide trend. And obviously, let's discuss our opinions on those takeaways.
Yeah. So first up, we have that mirrorless cameras are more popular than DSLR cameras for pro photographers. This is an odd takeaway. I'll tell you for why. But anyway, 63% of professional photographers use a mirrorless camera, while 36% of them use DSLR camera. Only 1% use both.
Yeah, for some reason, I thought that the DSLRs are still a majority among professional photographers, but probably not in Australia.
Maybe not in Australia. Also, I find it quite interesting how a lot of, for example, the Natural History Museum's Wildlife for the Photographer of the Year, which we went to go and see recently, most of the cameras that won, I think of them, there were only 1 or 2 mirrorless bodies. And we're talking in Nikon's lineup, not in other brands. There were lots of Nikons, but the vast majority, I'd say like 95% was DSLRs. However, upon speaking to many of those photographers, because we did get to interview some of them online or through email, and a lot of them said that they were pictures taken a couple of years back and that now they were using a mirrorless system. Not all of them, but some of them. So I think that if this is very, very current data, then it might be true that the majority
actually,
is
you're
mirrorless.
absolutely right. I've just started to think about that. Actually, who makes the DSLRs? And we have Nikon and Canon. Well, there's Pentax as well, but I think their share of the market is quite small. Now, if you start to look at Sony, which is the number one in the market share at the moment, and also yet Fuji on top of that, and obviously Nikon and Canon mirrorless offerings and a big push for them this year, then yes, it does make sense that mirrorless are a majority at the moment.
That's right. Now, next up, they said that mirrorless cameras are more popular than DSLR cameras for amateur photographers too, but not by much. 54% of amateur photographers use a mirrorless camera, while 46% of them use a DSLR.
It's an even split, but I think that amateurs are generally tend to buy new technology a bit more often compared to professional photographers who look at them from the investment point of view. So I agree with that particular takeaway.
Now, they said the most common reason why pro photographers use mirrorless cameras is that they are smaller and lighter. They obviously haven't carried a Z9 around with them. The second most common reason was that they offer better autofocus.
Yeah, but then if you look at Z9, it's still lighter than D6 and D5 cameras.
Yes, although not by much. Yes, and the mirrorless lenses are lighter than the F-mount equivalent. So I suppose there's that taking into account as well. They also said the most common reason why amateur photographers use mirrorless cameras is that they're smaller and lighter, and that the second most common reason was that they offered in-body stabilization.
Yeah, what do you think about this? I mean, if you start to look at the technical point of view, yes, I mean, image stabilization is fantastic. It's nice to have lenses with vibration reduction and VR on the sensor. From photography point of view, if you're not sports and wildlife photographer, it's nice feature to have. I never looked at that as a deal breaker for me personally.
No, sure. And also, we don't know in this survey what type of photographers they are. Do they do wildlife? Do they do sports? Or is it a very general, wide cross-section of all genres of photography?
That's true. Well, my film camera doesn't have an image stabilizer on the film itself. So, so I'm better probably sell it and buy something else. But here you have it. I mean, yes, I think as photographers, we're probably also keen technology enthusiasts more than anything else.
Yeah.
And we do look at specs by the cameras. For a lot of people, it's actually more prevalent than the actual image taking process.
That's right. Now, let's have a look at these next 2 points. So apparently for professional photographers, 31% of them use Nikon, closely followed by 28% Canon and 20% Sony. Again, we think this is just in Australia. While the amateurs, 27% of them use Canon, closely followed by Nikon at 25% and Sony at 16%. So that's interesting. Now, next up, the Sony A7 Mark III is the most popular camera used by pro photographers, apparently. 7% of them use that, while the Canon R6 and then Nikon D750 come in joint second and third places.
Okay.
The Alpha A7 III and the Nikon D850 are the most popular cameras used by amateurs. I mean, that's a pretty beautiful camera, the D850. I don't know about the Sony. For amateurs to use, D850 is phenomenal. So good on you, whoever uses those.
Yeah, I mean, the most popular Sony camera in my household is PlayStation 5.
Mine too.
This joke never gets old.
Professional photographers like to use the Sony A7 III for their personal photography pursuits too, and apparently then followed by the Fujifilm X-T3 and D850, which are also popular choices.
It's interesting because in this segment, we have three different cameras. We have a mirrorless camera, we have a DX camera, and we have a DSLR. So I think it's a nice combination that just shows that they're different people who like different things. So there's no clear winner there.
That's right. Now, the last thing is the most common reason why both amateur and professional photographers use DSLRs is due to the superior lens selection. The second most common reason was that switching to the mirrorless system is too expensive. When it comes to Nikon, I don't think it is, because you can obviously still use your F-mount lenses with your mirrorless camera. So you're not really, yes, if you want to change the whole system, it's going to be expensive. But if you just want to dip your toe into mirrorless, buy the adapter. Maybe it's not that case though. With Canon, you have to buy all new lenses, I guess.
All right. Well, I have a proposition for you. Since we are obviously a very independent, unbiased, Nikon-only shop that sells only Nikon,
And nothing else.
let's talk how it is in the UK from our Nikon unbiased point of view. So your point of DSLRs versus mirrorless, what's your opinion? What happened this year? Do we see a lot of sales of mirrorless cameras and lenses over the DSLRs?
Yes. It's about 10 to 1.
All right. What about, let's say, entry-level segment? Do we see that cameras like D30, 3000 and G5000 series slow down quite a bit and people are considering mirrorless equivalents?
No. Now, here's the reason why. The entry-level segment for mirrorless is a little bit different at this point. And actually, the beginning or the entry-level camera is the Z30, which is still too new to have made any kind of overall impression, I think. However, the D3000 series and 5000 series have now been officially discontinued. So when we got the last of the stock that we were going to get around summer this year, that was it.
Now, let's talk about professional photographers. Do you think the professional photographers now used in majority mirrorless over DSLRs, or do you think it's split 50-50?
I think it's closer to 60-40 now, but it's only in the advent of the Z9 becoming readily available that we've seen more and more professionals switch over. And I think that that will carry on through to next year. Probably by the end of next year, we'll be having a very different conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like, end of next year, we'll be saying professional photographers are in the majority using DSLRs. But I think it's going to take another year for a lot of people to pick up the Zs.
Yeah, I think with the current availability of Z9, which just happened, we're talking about within the last 2-3 weeks. Do you think we're going to definitely see a huge uptake next year, people buying Z9, et cetera, et cetera?
That's what I believe. I'm happy to be proved wrong, but I think that without the D850 ever seeing a replacement and without having any more new DSLRs on the market, just we've got what we've got, right? The D6, the D850, the D780, and the D7500. That's all that's left.
Here's the question for you. Yeah. Let's just skip all the, let's say, love for DSLRs and all this. Yeah. So let's say Nikon releases D850 Mark II. Let's call it D870, like old-fashioned way, not the Mark II things. But do you think realistically it will sell big numbers? Let's just keep that it's the best camera in the world, DSLRs rule, etc., etc. But let's just take all this away and just look at the numbers. Do you think D850 Mark II will sell similar figures to, let's say, something like Z8, if Z8 is a D850 mirrorless replacement?
No. If I were in charge of Nikon sort of R&D department or whatever, I would not be putting my money into that. Not because I don't love DSLRs, because I do, but because there is a lot more kind of possibility with mirrorless in terms of technology. And it seems weird to bring out a camera that would have a much smaller uptake, because a lot of people who were on the fence about Zs have already moved over to Zs and they wouldn't then move back. Do you see what I mean? I think that we're past that point where bringing out a new DSLR makes sense.
From another point of view, we probably still have a group of people who are still with their DSLRs, because clearly Z9, which is the first camera with a superb autofocus, etc., that can compete with D850 in terms of performance, right? Mm-hmm. There's still people there that are not ready to spend £5,500.
No.
So the question is, if they release D850 Mark II and Z8 at the same time, do you think they'll buy D850 or Z8 instead? Hypothetically, we're just speculating here.
I don't see as many people buying a D850 upgrade as would buy a Z8.
Okay.
Hypothetically, if that were to ever happen, we would see a very, very small uptake of a D850 Mark II. It's going to be like the 10 people that are going to comment on this video and say, I would buy a D850 Mark II.
I'm sure you
And
will.
for you, that's great. Well, let me ask you, what do you think? Because I look at sales trends based on the fact that I am the manager and I have to look at sales trends. But you...
It's funny because I always talk about numbers, and Becky actually the one who does it.
Yeah, I'm the one that manages the stock and the sales. So you, from your sort of popping into the office twice a week, what's your opinion?
Wow, that hurts.
Yeah. No, what do you see in the big wide world? Because I'm looking from a sort of much smaller view of a camera shop, whereas you might have a broader view of the public in general. So what would you say?
Well, since I prepare Nikon Report week to week, I've read a thing or two. I don't know anything, but I've read a thing or two, and I genuinely look at the numbers.
Yeah.
Like CIPA numbers, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And if we take the feelings out of it, the world has switched to mirrorless.
Yes.
DSLR will stay there. It will be a niche of dedicated people who would love their cameras.
Yeah.
And there are some cameras that Nikon doesn't have an equivalent in mirrorless, aka G500. So it still will be there, but the world has moved on. Mm-hmm. You like it or not, and again, we have to take the feelings out of it. It's just, you look at the numbers and you see that, yes, unfortunately, we are switching to mirrorless.
Yeah.
Kudos to Pentax to staying with DSLRs, that's great, but it seems like the big players like Nikon, Canon, and Sony. Obviously, Sony moved a long time ago.
Yes.
They switched to mirrorless. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of time where professional photographers will switch to mirrorless cameras just because, well, they earn money from their photography.
There you go. That's not a definitive view on the world of photography in general. We would love to hear your opinions. What do you think? I mean, would you buy a D850 Mark II or replacement should it ever manifest? And I can tell you now it won't, but would you, hypothetically, with your hypothetical monopoly money, would you spend it on that or would you buy a Z8?
But when you decide to comment on this issue, what we would ask you is actually try to apply logic to it. So let's take the feelings out of it because we love DSLRs. But realistically speaking, if you look at the numbers, you see where the trend is going. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to other news. Black Friday is coming up. Remember that?
Black Friday deals. Most companies have already started their Black Friday deals. We call it Royal Blue Friday at Grays because we're not American and because Royal Blue is our brand Bible color. So we have a few offers. We've got 20% off second hand up to £250 per item.
Okay, that's good.
That's pretty darn good. Then we also have 10% off filters and memory cards. That includes the very pricey and premium Delkin Black card. So if you were wondering about getting one of those, you can get 10% off now.
It's a good way to get them.
It is a good way to get them. We also have a free Delkin CF Express reader for every 325 gig Delkin Black card. If you buy one, then you get one completely free. And we're also doing free film. Woohoo! When you buy a film camera from us. So not only do you get 20% off your film camera, you also get a free roll of film.
You buy a film camera, you need a memory card for it. So here you have it. It's thrown in for free.
That's just the memory card for your film camera. Now, there are other brands that are also doing some Black Friday deals that we thought were noteworthy. So what have we got?
The other companies that we sell also will do some sales, like three-legged things. Voigtland is going to have 10% off the lens as well. So it's a good time to buy a Voigtland lens if you're interested in one. But then if you're looking at the broad market, I'm sure there's plenty of deals. I know that Adobe is doing 40% of Creative Suite.
Wow.
Those are 50 quid a month thing. So with 40, sounds about £30 or something like this. Again, for some of you who need to use all of it, it's pretty useful for a year, you know. But then we have offers from Capture One. We have Topaz Labs is doing offers as well as Small Rig. If you found a really good deal, do share them in the comments below. And we're going to have a live stream discussing all those beautiful deals on actual Black Friday this week.
Yeah. Anyway, so moving on. The new Voigtlander 65mm f2 a spherical lens for the Nikon Z mount will apparently start shipping on November 24th. How exciting. What a Thanksgiving that will be.
All right, they've released quite a few macro lenses. Yeah, there's a 35 f2 for DX. They now have 65. I mean, if you're a macro photographer, there's so many offerings from Nikon and Voigtlanders at the moment.
So excited.
Yeah, if you like flowers, join Becky.
So this is the full frame one, right? Because
Yes.
the other one...
The other one's DX, this one's full frame.
We have actually reviewed the 35 macro Voigtlander lens. You just don't know about it yet. But you will very soon. We will have a video coming out on that in a couple of weeks' time.
Nice.
Hopefully we can get our hands on one of these and we'll do a review and I'll force Con to take more pictures of flowers.
I love that, clearly.
He does really. Hold up a little sign.
I'm winking.
Send help.
Speaking of three-legged thingy that we mentioned before, I call them thingy, I don't call them thing. They announced Zara, sounds like Zara or Zelda, a dedicated L bracket for Nikon Z9.
Yes.
So remember those L brackets for Nikon Z9. So you have so many options nowadays.
Yeah.
But this one comes from UK manufacturer.
We know that this is a good L plate because we've seen Rishi using it out in the wild and posting about it on his Instagram page. If you're interested, it is available in copper, slate, grey and darkness and is available for $129.99. It will be up on the Grays of Westminster website very soon as well.
All right, let's move on to Weekend Read and Watch section where we have the annual live stream that happens with Matt Irvin, Richie and Seth Miranda every year around this time. It happened last Friday.
It did. It happened on Friday. It was a good hour and a half. It was actually really entertaining. You know, what I noticed is that the five of us have very similar opinions about certain things. So
Yeah, I agree. I think when you skip all the noise of YouTube and clickbait and likes and all this, I like when people just talk straight.
What I found interesting also was that although Matt and Seth both use other brands, not just Nikon, obviously there was a Nikon slant to it because Rishi was there, but they genuinely have a lot of appreciation for what Nikon have managed to accomplish in spite of the difficulties over this last year as a manufacturer in general. And I think that it's quite sobering if you are someone who has maybe gotten a bit frustrated about the general situations, about the releases, then you listen to them chat. Matt was great. He kept saying, like, I'm going on a tirade and I'm really sorry. But it was so refreshing to actually hear someone who kind of told it like it was. And they're all very good at doing that. So it's well worth a watch. And also do subscribe to all their relevant channels because they're all absolutely great photographers and real sources of information for Nikon lovers everywhere.
Give it to me straight. I think this is the message of it. Skip all the clickbaitiness, skip all the noise. This is very important. This is very hard to come by on the social media nowadays.
It is.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us this week.
Yes, thank you very much for watching and or listening. Please give us a like and a subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, if you're listening on a podcast platform, then you can do a follow, a rating, a review. It's all tremendously appreciated for our little channel over here.
Absolutely. If you don't know what podcast is, it's this YouTube video, but in audio form where you can listen anywhere in 320 kilobits per second. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music, and all other respected podcast platforms.
That's right. And then we're also on the internet. We post occasionally on Instagram. Myself at Rebecca_Danese.
I'm in Konstantin Kochkin, and the shop is at Nikon and Grace. We've just published a few samples taken with 90mm wide lens lens, so do check them out as well. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.